Welcome to this Synthesis 2024 in which Venezuela is the main protagonist. The date of the Venezuelan presidential elections was chosen in a great agreement in which all political actors participated. In the month of February, the political actors of the country met to propose the dates for the presidential election, with the participation of 97% of the political parties and 152 organizations of political, social, and economic life of the country. 500 proposals were received. These proposals were sent to the electoral power that finally decided Sunday, July 28th as the date for the Great Electoral Party. There began the countdown for a new electoral process. We humbly hope, Mr. President, that you will attend and evaluate this document, which we do not hesitate to classify as historic, that you may review, based on your prerogatives and your functions, what is contained in this document, and that you will set the table so that the electoral party may be activated. We are very pleased to receive this proposal. We begin to study it, and we will be giving the people of Venezuela permanent information on how this process of study of the proposals you brought here is going. In this presidential election, 38 political parties will participate, supporting 10 candidates for the presidency, the largest number of candidates in the last 30 years. For these presidential elections, there were 10 candidates running. In spite of this, despite the fact that there were 10, the voting intention was focused only on two of them: the candidate for the Gran Polo Patriótico Party, Nicolás Maduro, and the extreme right-wing opposition candidate, Edmundo González. Let us review each one of them and their proposals. The first candidate, and nominated by the great patriotic Pole, Nicolás Maduro Moros, led the campaign under the slogan "Hope is in the streets." In the final stretch of the campaign activities, Chavismo closed in Caracas after touring more than 180 localities in defense of the achievements reached, promoting the vote, a call for unity in the face of coercive measures of the United States, and for a national political dialogue. On the other hand, the candidate of extreme right-wing for the so-called Democratic Unitary Platform, Edmundo González Urrutia, was characterized for being absent in most of the campaign, which were led by the extremist Maria Corina Machado. González Urrutia came from a long pause of holding public office without presenting a clear proposal for the country, but opening a new way to a process of privatization of education, health, and oil. The group of presidential aspirants included the candidate of the Hope for Change Party, Javier Bertucci, an evangelical pastor and businessman. Also running for the Democratic Action Party, Luis Eduardo Martinez, one of the longest-serving candidates in politics. At that time, he declared that violence was never the way. The candidate for the opposition party, Primero Venezuela, José Brito, maintained his campaign with criticism to the national government and at the same time rejected the imposition of coercive measures by the United States and requested by the extreme right wing. We continue with Daniel Ceballos, the candidate of the Arepa movement, who presented the Arepita, a cryptocurrency that would be proposed if he became president. In allusion to the ultra-right-wing president of Argentina, Javier Milei, Ceballos used a chainsaw to interpret a supposed break with the current political parties. Antonio Ecarri for the Lapis Party defined himself in his electoral campaign as a center liberal, adding that among his government plans would be to prioritize education and national production. From the party Solutions for Venezuela, the candidate Claudio Fermin, of long political trajectory in Venezuela, presented himself in this contest with a government proposal of integration with the factors of production and as a government of amplitude. The candidate for the People-Centered Party, Enrique Marquez, held positions within the National Electoral Council and was an opposition parliamentarian for the UNT Party before the National Assembly. He was the candidate, together with Edmundo González, who refused to sign the agreement of acceptance of the results of the commercial entity. Finally, for the party Confederación Nacional Democrática, Benjamin Rousseau ran again in the electoral contest. Rousseau defined himself as a candidate not aligned with either left-wing or right-wing movements. He offered a governance pact to facilitate an orderly and peaceful transition. The authorities of the Venezuelan National Electoral Council announced in the early hours of July 28 the installation of more than 95% of the polling stations. Everything was ready for the great democratic exercise that finally took place. The president of the electoral power, Elvis Amoroso, offered a balance in which he confirmed the installation of the voting centers nationwide, as established in the schedule, while confirming the installation of 95% of the polling stations. Thus, the Venezuelan people participated in the electoral festivities of Sunday, July 28, and went from the early morning to the polls to express their will through the vote. However, the day was spoiled by the sabotage of the data transmission system by the national and international extreme right wing, a fact denounced by the rector of the CNE with the purpose of affecting the systematization of the electoral results. In spite of all the attacks of the extreme right wing against democracy and institutionality, the election day demonstrated their collective commitment to the defense of sovereignty, peace, and stability of the Venezuelan people. Venezuela reaffirms its electoral culture, consolidated with the arrival of the Bolivarian Revolution in 1999. Since then, 31 elections have been held in compliance with the participatory and protagonist nature of democracy, enriched in the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. These presidential elections in Venezuela, those of last July 28, had a clear winner, the candidate of the Great Patriotic Pool, Nicolás Maduro. After midnight, the electoral authorities announced President Nicolás Maduro as the winner with 51.20% of the votes, a figure equivalent to 5,500,092. He was followed by the candidate of the extreme right, Edmundo González, who obtained 4,445,978 votes. We're talking about 44% of the vote, while the rest of the opposition candidates added a little more than 4 percentage points. International observers of the Venezuelan electoral process assured that this is one of the best electoral mechanisms of the world and urged the international community to support the democratic process and to condemn the destabilization attempts made by the Venezuelan extreme right wing against the Venezuelan people. Through a communique, they express, "We congratulate the Venezuelan people for the realization of this democratic electoral process, which has been a true example of participation, civism, and transparency." Likewise, they emphasized, "We recognize the valuable work of the National Electoral Council of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela that granted the realization of elections throughout the Venezuelan territory through an electoral mechanism with the highest standards of transparency and auditability that placed them as one of the best in the world." Thus, he concluded, "We congratulate President Nicolás Maduro Moros and the great patriotic poll for this resounding victory for peace, the future, and the happiness of the Venezuelan people. We call on the international community to support the Venezuelan democratic process and condemn the attempts of destabilization and violence by the international and imperial Venezuelan extreme right wing." It's time to take a breath. We're going to pause. As we said before, we're going to show a video, but it must be said that this video is manipulated by the social networks. Look at the extent to which the way in which the facts about Venezuela were shown. This video was manipulated by the extreme right wing in social media. Just got a procedure with a boy who came with a gun. Good thing, you caught them. Whoever you see protesting, you kill them, you shoot them. Nobody has a right to protest in Venezuela, and if he goes to jail, torture him, break his legs, so he never protests against me. If you kill one of those boys, I give you more money and a house. I'm not going to, I'm the one who is in charge here. I promise a block path, and that's what I'm going to give you. We already have several dead. When they see 20 more, they'll get scared and don't protest. Long live for Chavez and revolution. Here is the real video. Some guys were coming with guns. It's no justification. They were paid $50. Who paid them? To two boys. Who paid them? I don't have more information. Don't let them go. That's a procedure. This zone has been very violent. Then I'm very happy that you are protecting the people. These are criminals. We have more than 1,200 criminals captured, trained in Texas, Colombia, Peru, and Chile. They were trained to come and attack, to burn. They tried to burn this hospital, the community saved it, and you. Is that a protest? Political struggle? Burning hospital? That is terrorism. That is right. That's fascism. Are these people ready to govern this country? No. I'm fighting. I'm counting on you. Long live the Bolivarian National Guard. Synthesis 24 shows you the best of Venezuela during this period. There was everything, a lot to tell. After the results of the presidential elections, it must be said that the Venezuelan extreme right wing unfortunately carried out riots in several cities of the country. The following is an account of the damage caused by the extreme right during the demonstrations and riots nationwide on July 29 and 30. Violent groups attacked at least 11 subway facilities, 28 Metrobus units, 27 transport and 10 police commands, 27 monuments and statues, 57 educational institutions, 10 facilities of the National Electoral Council, and 10 houses of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Following the fascist violence, the Venezuelan Minister of Defense, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, denounced that these armed groups were seeking to perpetrate a coup d'etat against President Nicolás Maduro. A coup d'etat failed by this fascist of the extreme right wing, supported, of course, by the imperial factors. In the balance, Attorney General Tarek William Saab clarified that those involved in the violent acts are not political prisoners, but criminals who lend themselves to carry out terrorist actions. These people are not political prisoners. Unfortunately, they are criminals who lend themselves to carry out terrorist actions, crimes, paid by the so-called little commandos. In order to clarify the facts of violence, the Attorney General announced the formal installation of a Committee for Justice of Victims of Fascism. He emphasized having compiled more than 300 videos and evidence that shows the truth of what happened in the presidential elections of July 28. We have achieved expertise bigger than the previous one. If at the beginning there were 200 videos showing evidence that is part of the investigation, today it is almost 300 videos that prove what was happening. In the face of these crimes of political violence, state authorities announced that justice will be granted and the intellectual authors of these acts will be penalized. The Attorney General affirmed that those who are declared innocent by means of investigation which do not determine their criminal responsibility to go to trial will be released immediately. Following the violent acts promoted by the Venezuelan extreme right wing after July 28 election results, who refused to recognize the victory of Nicolás Maduro, before this, President Maduro showed a contentious appeal before the Supreme Court of Justice aimed at these as the results. After following violent acts promoted by the Venezuelan extreme right wing after the July 28 election result, President Nicolás Maduro filed a contentious appeal before the Supreme Court of Justice aimed at investigating what happened during the electoral process. I am willing to be summoned and requested, interrogated in any part, investigated by the Electoral Court as a presidential candidate who won the elections of Sunday and as a head of state. I show my face. I comply justice. After the court accepted the appeal, the presidential candidates were summoned and requested the National Electoral Council to submit the documents related to the process in order to formally initiate the investigation and verification aimed at certifying the results. 9 of the 10 candidates attended the call of the highest court. 8 of them subscribed the minutes and committed themselves to contribute to the investigation to clarify everything related to the presidential election. What I ask the Supreme Court of Justice is that for the peace of the country, for the future of our nation, and for the faith and trust in the institution of the vote, everything that happened on July 28 be clarified, be brought to light, and that we transparently accept the results such as the audits express them. The Electoral Chamber studied the expertise of the electoral material consigned by the National Electoral Council, a procedure based on the thorough examination of all the evidence by the technical staff. Based on the thorough investigation of the material submitted, the Supreme Court of Justice declared the lawsuit filed by the President Nicolás Maduro admissible and validated the results of the presidential election offered by the CNE. It certifies in an unobjectionable manner the electoral material and validates the results of the presidential election of July 28, 2024, issued by the National Electoral Council, where Nicolás Maduro Moros was elected as President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Rodriguez also ratified the content of former presidential candidate Edmundo González Urrutia for not complying with the summons issued by the Electoral Chamber. That the former candidate Edmundo González Urrutia did not attend any of the phases of this process to which he was summoned, and therefore did not comply with the order of the highest instance of the contentious electoral jurisdiction of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, nor with the consignment of the tally sheets, the list of witnesses, or any electoral material. Consequently, he disregarded the mandate in frank and respect to the judicial authority, demonstrating his reluctance without leaving the constitutional order, a conduct that entails the sanctions foreseen in the legal system in force. Homeland, constitution, law, and order. This is how the Venezuelan president described the sentence of the Supreme Court of Justice that ratified the will of the people. After carrying out a technical, scientific, professional, and legal work based on the laws as the judicial power of the nation, it has issued a historic and conclusive sentence, and we say from the streets of La Guaira and Venezuela, holy word, let there be peace. Absolute respect for the public powers, respect for the right to peace. The Venezuelan president called for unity and dialogue among all Venezuelans to work for the development of the country and the peace that the ultra-right wanted to take away. Continuing in this order of ideas and facts, last September 7, Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, through Instagram, reported that the former presidential candidate of the extreme right-wing, Edmundo González, had left the country to Spain after the Venezuelan government granted him a safe conduct. For those living inside Venezuela, there was no major surprise. Here's the announcement. In a communique, the Vice Mandatory expressed, today, September 7, the departure from the country of the opposition citizen Edmundo González Urrutia, who had voluntarily taken refuge in the embassy of the Kingdom of Spain in Caracas several days ago and requested the processing of his political asylum before the government. In this sense, once the pertinent contacts between both governments had taken place, the extremes of the case were fulfilled, and in accordance with the international legality, Venezuela granted the due safe conduct in order to preserve tranquility and political peace of the country. Following the communique, the Foreign Ministry of Spain expressed that the government of Spain and Venezuela did not carry out any political negotiation. There has not been any type of political negotiation between the government of Spain and the government of Venezuela, nor there is any counterpart to the departure of Edmundo González from Caracas upon his arrival in Madrid. The only contact that there have been logically in order for Spanish armed forces plane to land in Caracas, an authorization is needed, and a guarantee that when the Spanish embassy vehicle was moving from the ambassador's residency, where Edmundo González was staying, to the Spanish Air Force plane, there was not going to be any incident. That's the only contact there is. The Vice President of Venezuela denied the declarations of the Spanish Foreign Ministry, who claimed that they would be unaware of the process of negotiation and transfer of the former candidate Edmundo González after he was granted political asylum. That falsehood is not a good advisor. Conversations and contacts took place to operationalize the departure of the oppositionist González Urrutia from the country. In this regard, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil informed that the former ultra-right-wing candidate González Urrutia was taking refuge in the embassy of the Netherlands during the fascist violence unleashed after the election. The head of diplomacy informed that Caracas will send a note of protest for the diplomatic irregularity. The first vice president of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, affirmed that the former candidate Edmundo González Urrutia went to Spain, fleeing from the most radical extreme fascist right wing headed by María Corina Machado. The president of the Venezuela National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, asked the Foreign Policy Commission of the Legislative to draft a proposal to vote in plenary and urged the president to break diplomatic and economic political relations with Spain that includes companies and even flights from Spanish airlines. Pass a resolution to be approved by the plenary urging the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to immediately break up all diplomatic relations, all commercial relations, all consular relations. All the representatives of the legislation of the government of the Kingdom of Spain and consulates and consuls leave the country. For his part, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro said he respected and understood the decision of the former candidate Edmundo González Urrutia to request political asylum in Spain and stressed that the steps taken are for the peace of the country. I can say to Ambassador González Urrutia, with whom I have confronted hard after July 29, that I have been attentive to all this, and I understand the step he has taken, and I respect it. And I hope he does well on his way and in his new life, and that he can be sure that his wishes for peace and harmony for the country will be fulfilled. In Venezuela, peace will reign above anything else. Today, Venezuela is in peace, while the country is moving forward with an economic growth of 8.7% and more than 70% of investors betting on Venezuela. And what is the situation now? We're coming to the end of the facts. A very interesting account that have shown what is going to happen on January 10th. That is the key date. Nicolás Maduro will take office as constitutional president of Venezuela for the period 2025-2031. According to the provisions of Article 231 of the Constitution of Venezuela, the president will be sworn in before the National Parliament as president-elect after his victory of July 28. Nicolás Maduro confirmed that he will be present at the legislative seat to comply with the provisions of the law. According to the state's legal regulations, the elected president could be sworn in before the Supreme Court of Justice in the event of any supervening motive. We will now say goodbye to this special program with a song that fills us with hope, drive, and joy. The song Venezuela, Hope is in the Streets. Stay tuned with teleSUR.
Adelante hacia el futuro, construyendo y trabajando. Nicolás Maduro, hombre sencillo y de paz, mi presidente obrero, dándonos seguridad y un gran futuro a los niños y a los mayores, lealtad. La esperanza